In chapter 8.2, we are going to talk about the counting principle. And before we talk about the counting principle, we first need to know that an outcome is the possible result of an event. So one way we determine the total number of outcomes of a situation is to use the fundamental counting principle. And this is that the total number of outcomes is the product of the number of choices for each event. So if we look at an example in this first one, it says use the fundamental counting principle to determine the total number of outcomes for each situation. So if we have the RHS cheerleaders sell Rebel Pride t-shirts each year, how many possible outcomes for the table below? Well, if we look at the number of different colors, we have 5 total colors. And then they also all come in different sizes. We have 6 different sizes. And then they could also come in long sleeve, short sleeve, or a hoodie. So that's 3 different choices of shirt type. So if we want to know how many possible outcomes could we have, we need to multiply those 3 numbers together. So if I have 5 times 6 times 3, I get 90 possible outcomes. So one of the outcomes, for an example of an outcome, could be a red shirt, medium size, and a long sleeve. But I could also have a red shirt, size small, as a hoodie. So there's a lot of different combinations of color, size, and type that I could create. And the total number of outcomes or different possibilities, there are 90 different possibilities for these different criteria. Okay, so if we look at number 2, how many possible outcomes are there for tossing a dime and a quarter at the same time? So if I tossed a dime, I could either get heads or tails, so that would be 2 different outcomes. And if I toss a quarter, again, I could either get heads or tails, so that's 2 more outcomes. So if I multiply 2 times 2, I would get 4 different outcomes. Okay, so let's look at number 3. This says Avery completed a quiz that contained 4 true-false questions and 6 multiple choice questions. How many outcomes are possible for the answer key to the quiz? So let's see, if she has 4 true-false questions, that means if for her first question, she picks either true or false. There are 2 outcomes there, true or false, for each of her 4 questions. So that would be 2 times 2 times 2 times 2. Each of her 4 questions, there is 2 different outcomes that could occur. Now I could also write that as 2 to the 4th. Just makes it a little simpler. So then for her 6 multiple choice questions, A, B, C, or D, there's 4 outcomes there. She could pick A, B, C, or D, and that's going to happen 6 times because there are 6 questions. So again, I could write it all out. 4 times 4, 6 times. Or I could just write 4 to the 6th. That's the same thing. So when I multiply those together, I get 65,536. Okay, for the last question, number 4, it says there are 5 multiple choice problems on a quiz, possible answers of A, B, C, or D. How many combinations of answers are possible? So this is just like the last one. If I have 5 questions and each of those questions has 4 different outcomes, I would have 4 to the 5th power. or 4 times 4 times 4 times 4 times 4. However you want to think about it. It's going to be easiest though if we can just write it with the exponent. 4 multiplied 5 times, that's going to give me 1,024. So that's how many different possibilities on that quiz.